Thank you, Dr. Mohan, for the nice and lucid talk. Our second speaker, counterpart, and he's going to talk, Dr. Ganesh, he's going to talk type 1 diabetes may be managed with the self-monitoring of the blood glucose with the multiple dose injections. Dr. Ganesh, please.
There's a small correction. I'm not working in Medanta Medicity anymore. I'm working in Max Super Specialty Hospital. So congratulations, Mohan. You've done a fantastic job and you've made a significant emotional appeal in favor of pump and CGM therapy. Now, Mohan has already elaborated that DCCT has shown us that intensive care of diabetes, that is in terms of multiple injections and multiple tests, is associated with better A1Cs and lesser microvascular complications. And although shown in DCCT, intensive care therapy was associated with more hypoglycemia, but now we know that just because if we keep high A1C, that does not mean that you do not get hypoglycemia. We still do get hypoglycemia. There are two kinds of approaches to intensive treatment, which we are debating here. And for majority of the type 1 diabetics post-DCCT, MDI has been the standard of care. It is not that the MDI today is same as it was in the DCCT time. It has changed with respect to newer basal insulins, better prandial insulins, also smarter and basal, better pens, which can integrate with bolus advisors, and also even have the facility of insulin onboard calculations. Now, the debate is not about rapid versus regular insulin. The debate is not about importance of glycemic variability. The debate is whether pump is giving a solution to these problems. I agree totally with Mohan that we cannot have a one-size-fits-all approach. We have to have what suits best to that particular patient. So there is a group of patients which would probably benefit with the help of insulin pump or CGM, but we'll discuss what is the majority or what happens to the majority of patients with type 1 diabetes. This is a fantastic iPro 11 device which has a lot of beautiful features, but there are two problems. I cannot afford it. Second problem, I bought it, but I use it only for giving phone calls and doing messages. I cannot use any other feature of this. So Mohan has already nicely elaborated that cost is a significant factor, and it cannot be ignored. So, and although we may have facilities like free pumps or EMI, it cannot cover majority of patients with type 1 diabetes. This is a comparison of what is available in India. So you can see that with MDI, while we can manage diabetes with varying from 2 to 7,000 depending on which centers and which insulin you are using, the cost of these technological therapies is significantly high, beyond reach of majority of our patients. Cost is not the only concern. I know that. Let us imagine that we are a progressive country, although Yes Bank has kind of shut today, but we are going to be more prosperous and everybody has money enough to buy, or the pump costs have come down. This is a survey of about 200, 250 odd physicians about what perceptions they had about what were the barriers to pump therapy, and which we do see in our practice. A lot of patients, despite of being affording, do not like to have a device on their body. They do not like to be reminded of their diabetes all the time. They are uncomfortable with alarms. Some of the people do not, many of the people do not know what features to use. They're nervous to rely on technology. And these are real life problems in our type 1 diabetic patients. Madam in the afternoon lecture has nicely elaborated the kind of distress that is there in many of our type 1 diabetes families. And this distress doesn't come just like that. If you see the adherence task that a type 1 diabetes has to stick to, you can see blood glucose checks, logging glucose, counting carbs, administering insulin, maintaining supplies, seeing a doctor. There's so many things. And in many families, these things are managed by the patient himself or one of the parent. And adding something which can significantly involve a lot of additional work can really cause a lot of problems. Therefore, it is not surprising that even with technology like artificial pancreas, there were high rates of discontinuation of therapy. So in this study, almost like 30% of the adolescents decided to quit the automatic insulin pump. Now, Mohan has highlighted a lot of studies, but there is a problem. We have to we have to talk the science of it. Now, this is a meta-analysis, which one of the meta-analysis Mohan has also quoted, where it shows that the meta-analysis favored the pump therapy with a benefit of minus 0.3% with respect to HbA1c. HbA1c is the most important parameter that we discuss. Obviously, there are other parameters like time in range, which are assuming a lot of importance, and they are important. But if you see carefully, this is difference of minus 0.3, and this is the forest plot of the studies that are included in this meta-analysis. You can see that the results of this meta-analysis, which is like a Ganga Jamuna juice of lot of fruits, is impacted significantly by one single study. So if for those who do not know meta-analysis, meta-analysis is a combination of study which combines several studies into one. And if you see that these bars, if they are crossing midline or touching the midline, that means that the therapy is not, there is no benefit of that particular therapy. So there's only one single study in this on the basis of which has kind of changed the average to one side. So there is a fallacy when we interpret meta-analysis. Second, and most important, Glargine arrived in 2000 or 2001. All the studies before that use NPH, either once daily or twice daily. So whatever these studies are there before 2001, 2002, or 2003, or meta-analysis which include these studies are using single daily NPH or twice daily NPH. And there are very few studies which compare Glargine and now the other longer-acting basal insulins with the pump therapy. And these studies are kind of equivocal with respect to the benefits of pump therapy. So the question really now that we should answer is whether a Glargine plus short-acting or rapid-acting insulin-based MDI versus insulin pump therapy, what are we really seeing? And this is one very nice study called as REPOSE, which was a multi-center parallel group confirmatory cluster randomized control trial with an intention to treat analysis, which means that the original allocated group is analyzed, the ultimately outcomes are analyzed with respect to the originally allocated group, which is supposed to be a superior method of doing a randomized control trial. Blinding is not possible when pump randomized control trials are seen. So there were two groups. Now, so if we take the pump therapy versus MDI, there are other elements which could influence outcomes, such as what training did the patients receive, how frequently did the patient were contacted, what was the level of monitoring with respect to either blood glucose or CGM. So there are multiple variables which decide outcomes of these studies. So in this particular study, both groups of MDI as well as pump were given equal education. They were, the same insulin was used in both the groups, and Glargine was the basal insulin in the MDI group. And they were followed for 2 years, which is very significant. And they decided to see if there was a change in HbA1c from baseline, and what is the proportion of patients which reached HbA1c of less than 7.5%. So in this study, also they studied other outcomes like hypoglycemia or DKA. And when they analyzed as per the intention to treat analysis, considering some other variables, there was no significant difference in HbA1c in the MDI group as well as the pump group. The percentage of participants which reached HbA1c of less than 7.5%, which was the NICE target, was 25% and 23% in these groups, again, which was not statistically different. The rates of severe hypoglycemia during the 24 months did not differ between the two groups. So the pump therapy did not really change the rates of severe hypoglycemia, although the number of hypoglycemic events were not, there were not a huge number of hypoglycemic events. Also, the DKA, there were 17 episodes of DKA in the pump group versus 5 episodes of DKA in the MDI group. This may not be statistically significant because the numbers are too small. So the study concluded by saying that people with type 1 diabetes might better be served by ensuring greater availability of high-quality, structured self-management training. Similar study in children in the first year of diabetes was done, and it showed that there was no significant difference in A1C at 1 year and the percentage of patients achieving A1C of less than 7.5, and no difference in severe hypoglycemia. But the parental PEDS quality of life scores were slightly better in the CSIR, probably reflecting that because the younger children graze often and they were not having to pick that many times. So that parental satisfaction was slightly better in the pump group. So the study concluded that in the first year of treatment, the pump therapy did not offer improvement in terms of HbA1c over MDI. And the editor said that the most important thing from this study that 75% of patients do not meet their glycemic goals irrespective of what therapy you use. So we did a small survey of our insulin pump patients. 26 of them responded, and which is also must be a common clinical observation of many of you. A lot of patients who are using pump are not using all its features. Very few of them are doing carb counting. So in our study, a quarter of them did not do, 35% did not do carb counting regularly. They did not use the bolus wizard calculator for taking their meal doses, about half of them almost. Half of them did not know how to perform a basal rate check or how to do adjustment of basal insulin doses. So about only 50% of patients saw the doctor every 3 to 4 monthly. This is also one important problem which I've been highlighting, that the follow-up rates of pump patients, at least in my observation, are slightly more poor as compared to, follow-up rates are universally poor, but I see that visiting doctor frequently is a problem with respect to insulin pump patients also. 7 out of 26 of our patients reported at least one episode of decay while having insulin pump therapy. I know that these can be prevented by education or other things, but it is a fact. One study was shown where insulin pump pre and post A1C was shown. But obviously, if you start with an A1C of 11 and if you make them participate in any study, the A1C is going to decline. A1C is going to decline. And we need to have a control group along with to compare what happened to the control group where MDI with adequate education and adequate support was given. So I think it is difficult to interpret such studies at face value. This has made ACE Society to give guidelines about who are not good candidates for pump therapy. And I agree with Mohan totally that we need to really think about who is the one that is going to benefit from that therapy the most. That is where we should use it. We cannot have a general rule that this is best, this gives these features, so that's why it is good for everyone. That cannot be the same. So, and now you go through the list and you see how many of your patients fit into these criteria. Unable to do multiple injections, lack of motivation, psychological problems, substantial reservations, unrealistic expectations. Pump is going to be a magic wand, going to take care of everything. Many of our patients do fall in this group. And therefore, even now, despite of significantly advanced technology, it does remain a significant limitation while using this technology. Coming to, now I have presented about pump, whether it gives advantage over MDI. Is it really possible that we can have reasonable control with MDI and SMBG alone? Is there any evidence for that? So this is the study from my institute, which was published in Indian Pediatrics this year, which is a kind of retrospective combined prospective kind of a cohort, which is 512 retrospective patients and 257 prospective. Now this is from SGPGI Lucknow, where the insulin that is used for many patients is NPH twice a day, along with regular insulin thrice a day, which is also a basal bolus therapy. It is not, and a significant number now are on glargine-based MDI. Even in this center, we were able to achieve a median A1C of 8.3, which was not significantly different from what is obtained in the type 1 diabetes exchange clinic in United States. So even with this significant reservation, the only difference in SGPGI versus other places would be that the structure of diabetes care is superb. The amount of education that these people receive and the support in terms of telephonic calls, etc., that they receive is significant. 29% patients had an A1C of less than 7.5%. And how many did achieve in the type 1 diabetes exchange clinic? 17% in the US database, type 1 diabetes exchange, achieved a goal of less than 7.5%. So it was possible to have comparable outcomes with respect to at least comparing, when we take US as a standard for most things, it was possible even with the resource limited setting in our own country. I agree that the outcomes of pump therapy are best in the Nordic countries and countries like Sweden, where there is, the pump is supplied largely by the government pump supplies, and the structure of pump education and pump therapy is way better. So probably the way forward would be to have the structure of diabetes care designed in such a way that we walk towards these things, but right now, that doesn't seem to be the time. We need to wait for more evidence. We need to wait for evidence from our own country. We need to even simply document our clinical observations. With respect to CGM, I'm going to be a little kind, because CGM has shown improvement with respect to real-time CGM. Now, the most important thing is that this is seen with consistent use of CGM, which means that they have to be using 6 out of 7 days on ongoing basis. How many patients would do that? That is something which we need to think. There are problems, practical problems with CGM. It does show a lot of chaos, but often the diet, lifestyle information is not available. A lot of patients tend to have a reactive approach versus a proactive approach. They forget pattern management. They just focus on managing hypos and hypers. Outcomes are dependent. Even if the CGM shows chaos, ultimately the patient has to make changes. So psychologically, the patient has to be strong enough to make these changes in their diet, lifestyle, behavior. Without that, we are not going to have improvement in outcomes just because somebody is doing CGM. Generally, the steps of interpretation of CGM and SMBG are same, and adequately performed SMBG can give useful information. In some cases, SMBG might be better, so particularly when we have to catch some thieves who are writing false readings with a very high A1C. SMBG, in my experience, is superior to CGM in this particular scenario. So to conclude, diabetes technologies are useful for a selected indications, definitely, but as of now, we have not reached a level which can be recommended for all or even most of our patients. Cost and adherence are major concerns. As of now, the evidence of pump plus CGM being better than MDI plus adequate SMBG is at best very mild or not clear at all. And for majority of our patients, I'm talking of Indian patients, MDI plus SMBG, along with adequate self-management education, can give comparable glycemic control. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ganesh, for the nice and lucid talk.